Maybe you're not so black.
That's me.
That's right.
Oh, I
The
love
rest
it.
of the people live
Yes, it was, yes.
78, 80, 70,
No.
yeah. My wife never had a small meeting. She was, she said it's like, how you would like it cool. Not.
Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Providence, where we love beyond belief. Welcome, everyone assembled here in the meeting house. Welcome to those who are joining us for the first time, and welcome to those who are joining us on our YouTube channel from wherever you may be, nearby or far away. My name is Annie Bissett, and I'm happy to be your worship associate this morning. During the summer, while our ministers are away, the First U Worship Committee hosts a series of services which draw on the wisdom and talents of church members and friends. This morning, we are pleased to welcome Lynn Corbel as our speaker. Lynn has been a lifelong seeker of truth, of beauty, and of meaning. She works at Brown School of Professional Studies, training people all over the world in mindfulness-based practices. Lynn also is my wife. So we're tag teaming this morning. Music this morning will be provided by Stu Armstrong and Catherine Jameson. Thank you to you both. Let us now center our hearts and minds and begin our time together with a musical prelude. The poet Rumi says, "Today, like every other day, we wake up empty and frightened. Don't open the door to the study and begin reading. Take down a musical instrument. Let the beauty we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground." Please join us in reciting the words found in our order of service as we light our chalice and call ourselves into the sacred space of worship. This light burns also in our hearts, and it lights our path towards harmony, justice, and hope for all. And now is our time to greet each other. So I invite everyone to please stand as you are able, say hello to the folks sitting nearby, perhaps walk around a little bit and say hello to folks not so nearby. And as you make your way back to your seat, let's all turn toward the camera and say hello to the people who are at home. Now that we've practiced beloved community here this morning by greeting one another, let's recite together our formal call to beloved community in the form of our church covenant, which is written in your order of service. We, the members of the First Unitarian Church of Providence, with respect for the worth and dignity of each person, with wonder at the light we know by many names, and with gratitude for our deep connection to each other and to the larger web of existence, covenant to walk together in our search for truth, seeking the paths of wisdom, compassion, and justice. And now please stand as you are able and join together in singing hymn number 89, "Come My Way, My Truth, My Life."
You're right on time. A reading by the poet William Stafford. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you're pursuing. You have to explain about the thread, but it's hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen. People get hurt or die, and you suffer and grow old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread.
One of the ways that we here at First U help each other hold fast and hold the thread through the changes of our lives is by sharing our joys and our sorrows, which are brought to our community in a book that sits at the back of the church, and it's available to write in every Sunday. The beautiful candlestick for the large candle from which we light our individual candles was carved for us by members of our partner church in Transylvania. A candle of strength and surrender to my dear friend Eli and his wife Barbara as they face this chapter of the last stages of his diagnosis. A candle of healing for Cece Emerson, who is in the hospital due to a bad reaction to her latest chemo treatment, and a candle of strength for her sister, Alyssa Emerson, who is her support. Friends, let us rest in the gladness that we have each other to share our joys and sorrows. It makes all the difference. Now Lynn will lead us in meditation.
This is a brief period of time where we can recollect ourselves in this present moment. During this time of silence, if you've lost someone close to you in the past year, you're invited to stand or raise your hand in silent witness of that loss. And so now, just becoming present. You might feel your body in the position that it's in the pew, your feet on the floor, your back against the back of the pew that's holding you, resting in gravity, this generous force that holds us here. Inviting the eyes to close or lower, and dropping into this silence and interiority for a few moments. Thank you. It's a joy to sit in silence with you. The thread you follow, the heart's pull. In the poem that I read by William Stafford, he speaks of this thread. This is one of the poems that he wrote in the days right before he died. And when I learned this poem for me read like a love letter to his readers, certainly to me, offering a clarion call to wake up, a reminder to identify and follow what is important and salient for each one of us, and to know it. When I was invited to speak at this summer service, I knew what my topic was going to be right away, but it took me a while to find the language to describe it. The words I often use to describe this topic aren't ones that typically show up for Unitarians. Words like devotion or longing, or in the words of Rumi that Annie read, the hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. Another way to say this is that no matter where or how we might worship, whether that's on a Sunday morning in person or on live stream, a Friday night or a Tuesday at dusk, in a synagogue or a mosque, in a classroom or a boardroom, in the woods or by a tidal pool, we all bow down to something. We bring our intention and our interest, a leaning into something, whatever that might be for each one of us. This is what I want to highlight and hopefully invite you to look more closely at what you follow and bow down to and how you do that. The heart's pull, a thread you follow. What I have learned about this congregational community in my 5 short years here is that collectively we are devoted to social justice, to fairness, to equality and equity, to diversity and inclusion. We are devoted to belonging. We aspire to art in all its forms, music, writing, and outrageous creativity. We long for beauty and meaning. We have filled our days and years with study and thinking and scholarly pursuits. We are lovers of truth. We make time and prioritize caring for others, serving the community, reaching beyond ourselves. So while we might not use these words in our everyday parlance, at least from my perspective, longing, aspiration, devotion is alive and well at First U. So this title, The Heart's Pull, is the best description I have for this fully embodied sense of what I'm talking about. We don't know when the last days of our life are on this earth. But I take this call from Stafford as an invitation to recollect more sharply and precisely what I, and by extension, the invitation to you, what we connect with in ourselves, in this congregation, and beyond. To honor and reflect and see in each other these threads and the tapestries they make, the beauty, the tapestry of our own lives and the tapestries that we weave together here and beyond these walls. So I'll share a little bit about my heart's pull, and I hope that might inspire you to explore your own threads. When I was a very little girl, at the age when people used to ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't even know if that's a politically correct question to ask children anymore. But at that point in time, I replied with great assurance, I want to be a doctor. I never took the nurse route, although those little hats that they used to wear did appeal to me. But my pediatrician was a woman, so I never gave my wish to be a doctor a second thought in terms of my gender. I also, by the way, wanted to be a gas station attendant because I was mesmerized by those squeegees on the windshield, which actually speaks to a subthread in my heart's pull, but I'm not going to go there today. However, as I got older and my superpower for math and science refused to show up, I realized that being a doctor was not in the cards. I was disappointed, especially as I hit high school and beyond and saw the toll that work took on my father, who was an executive at AT&T. It seemed positively dreadful. So I turned to psychology. I'd had minor bouts with depression and anxiety, and thought, okay, I can approach health and well-being on this level. But one statistic shattered this dream too. A psych professor in college referred to research that said that the more education a psychologist had, the less helpful they were deemed by their clients. I can't cite that research now, but it had a big impression. So big that I walked out of the lecture hall and dropped out that semester. There were many other things going on in my life at that time, but that was kind of the clincher. So fast forward several years, a move to Boston, and a housemate who had an interesting profession, one I'd never heard of before. It was a massage therapist. This was the early 80s. I had no clue about such a thing, but I was very curious. So I bartered some sewing that he needed for my first massage ever. And for several hours after that experience, I sat in a rapturous silence of recognition. There was a quality of stillness and wholeness that I felt that seemed completely new and yet encoded somehow in my cells as home. I signed up for the next Introduction to Massage Therapy course at Ananda, which was the massage collective in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And on the first night, when I touched the feet of my classmate as she lay on the massage table, I knew I had found my way, my thread. Here was my thread. Was it doctoring in the usual sense? No, but it was healing, both for the person on the table and also for myself. Definitely a calling. So this thread of being a doctor was taking on a new meaning, highlighting a larger theme than a work title. There's a thread you follow. 25 years later, arthritis showed up in my hands, and I needed to give up this beloved work I had intended to do my whole life. Somehow, I found my way to finishing my undergraduate work through a remarkable adult learning program called University Without Walls, where I applied my 25-year career as a body worker, which I also considered to be part of my spiritual practice, to earn college credits. After graduating, something I had never thought possible, I decided that since I finally had a handle on APA formatting, I should continue on for my master's degree. But in what? I'd met some extraordinary faculty through the UWW program and found my way to one of them to talk about public health, which in my mind at that time was about vaccinations and chasing Ebola on another continent. So I didn't know how this was going to work out. But through all this, I'd had a strong personal meditation practice. And I'd also begun teaching a very specific evidence-based mindfulness meditation program in my community. So I raised this in conversation with the faculty, and this professor suggested that this, at the time, very woo-woo idea of meditation as a health intervention was a possible focus for my master's in public health. I applied to the program that afternoon and graduated in 2 years. Now, in the work I do now, teaching mindfulness meditation and training teachers, it's another kind of doctoring, another kind of public health. And it's interesting that meditation and medicine actually share the same Indo-European root, Madiri, which means to take one's right measure, and by extension can be extrapolated to suggest healing. In meditation, we meet ourselves as doctor and patient. Through meditation practice, we cultivate an inner connection to our own wisdom, our own thread, our own calling, and thus our own healing. In the teaching that I do in this sphere, which is with adults beyond the college age, I often use Stafford's poem as a prompt for people to explore, write, draw about what they've been following in their life. And people often trace it back to early childhood, just as I did, surfacing situations and memories that they see now have led to this moment, this work, or to this decision to meditate or to teach meditation. What people often come to see is that it's not always a consciously known path, especially at first. But looking back from their adult perspective, they perceive the twists and turns of their lives, and sometimes the most outrageous and horrible events, as a way of following their thread, a way of bowing down. This offers a very different perspective on our purpose. I remember one person speaking about the eating disorder that they navigated in their teens and early adulthood. This had been an experience of deep shame and anguish. They never talked about it, and yet here it was showing up in a training group as part of their thread. Looking back, they could see that while it was an enormously challenging chapter in their lives, the circumstances gave them everything they needed to grow beyond it and heal. This is not to suggest that the traumas and wounds of our lives are all good or easy to make into growth opportunities. But in our human search for meaning, in our wanting to make sense of this life, and especially the hardest things that happen to us, having some idea of what the heart's pull is helpful. It offers a way of sifting through and recognizing what might, at first glance, be tossed aside as chance or simply a painful chapter. Instead, if we sift through closely, we might uncover poignant moments of joy that live inside months of grief, or a surprising sense of purpose and dedication in what we originally only thought of as a bind with no way out. Think about the pandemic. How did you get through? What are you doing now from that time because you discovered or remembered that you really like yourself and your own company enough to not cram social activities into every single moment of a weekend? Or perhaps learned that a Zoom call with your best friend from high school was more life-giving than robotically heading to the gym for a workout? What do you continue to do from the worst of that time and take solace in? What nourishment would never have shown up except for the pandemic? A horrible time that perhaps revealed something of your thread to you. So these are some of the ways that my heart's pull has shown up, and hopefully it's making sense and you might be feeling some resonance or recognition. Likely, this kind of reflection isn't new for you. Unitarians are fond of reflection, I've learned. But maybe this lens of devotion offers a perspective you haven't considered. A powerful arena this often shows up in is what I call community practice. The food bank, for instance, is a perfect place to worship. Or caring for the gardens here at First U, you get to literally kneel down out there. Many of you care for others who need extra help, whether that's shoveling snow in the winter for an older neighbor or doubling a soup recipe for someone who's going through a hard time. These seem simple and obvious, but it can be powerful to acknowledge these threads as part of our calling, our heart's pull. Your thread might show up, as mine did, in the work sphere. In Buddhism, it's called wise livelihood, meaningful endeavors that fulfill something deeper than the need for a paycheck, that serve something larger beyond ourselves. Annie and I have a professor friend who teaches a course called The Philosophy of Love. Get this, though, he teaches it at MIT. Seriously, isn't that wild? And in the 20 years he's taught there, this course is regularly oversubscribed. Students are grateful to have a legitimate place to come together and speak about something that is not often talked about in college classrooms. He also volunteers in prisons teaching writing. These are his threads. So it could be work. It could be your avocation as an artist, a poet, a photographer, or a naturalist. It could be the love of your family and children as an important practice and commitment. My sister doesn't follow any particular religion, and yet early in her marriage, she realized that she was the CEO of her family. And seeing it like that deepened her commitment to being a wife and mother, not at the expense of her own self, but actually as a practice of bringing her best to her daily life, full as it is with kids and carpools and paying bills. Taking on this role with devotion changed how she viewed herself and those she loves. So we can see this heart's pull as a contemplative practice. And I invite you to reflect on when and where you have felt this pull. Where and when your chest literally moved a few millimeters or inches or miles towards something you couldn't always see or make out. Likely, it involved taking risks and being vulnerable. Following something that may not have made sense in a logical, rational way, but that felt so right in a way that perhaps no one else really understood. It takes enormous courage to follow this. Stafford says it true, people don't always understand. You never let go of the thread. This thread that shows up in our work, in our play, in our loving, in our actions and words and choices, connects us to the awe and mystery of the tapestry that is this universe. It is personal. We are, each of us, vast and unrepeatable. And from time to pull back, to get some perspective, it can offer us a view of this so we can see our part, vital and sufficient, the thread that ties us to the greater good, a greater plan, if you will, the thing that makes each of us who we are, do what we do. To end, I'd like to bring in a few words of the American poet Walt Whitman. In his famous poem, Leaves of Grass, he wrote these few words that take me to the heart of the heart's pull. I am larger, better than I thought. I did not know I held so much goodness. Each of us is larger, better than we thought, vast and unrepeatable. Following our thread, we are luminous and self-liberating. So lean in, follow the pull. Your own heart is calling.
Let's sing together hymn number 324, Where My Free Spirit Onward Leads. Please be seated. As a self-supporting congregation and a beloved, aspiring community, we rely on generosity and commitment to keep us vital and relevant. Our weekly offering is a manifestation of our faith and an opportunity to practice generosity and dedication in a small way that adds up to an important part of our capacity here at First U. We invite you to join in the spirit of love and open-handedness, and as always, thank you for all that you give, all that you do, and all that you are. Thank you so much, Catherine and Stu and Lynn. It's been a really beautiful morning to share with you all. Before we close, I have a couple of invitations somewhere here. The Jen Chapin Trio is coming back to First U this Friday, August 11. Please join us in the atrium for a night of great music. Bring an appetizer to share and gather at 5:30. Music begins at 6 o'clock. Donations will be split between the musicians and the Kelly Smith Memorial Fund. Don't miss a fun night and bring your friends. And everyone is invited for snacks and fellowship after worship. We gather in the summer in the breezeway here between the two buildings. If you are a first-time visitor, please be sure to stop at the welcome table. And let's close our service now by reciting the words in your order of service for the chalice extinguishing. We carry the flame of peace and love and hope until we meet again.